What is a perfect 100 IQ club? It's Dekar here, and today's video we're going to be doing a patch notes breakdown. So this video is for patch 11.4, and with each patch, the game balance team's goal is theoretically to balance the game by buffing or nerfing champs who have good or bad win rates, high ban rates, stuff like that. Pretty common sense, right? So the goal of my video will be to help you find out who's a winner and who's a loser. Now, Riot already lists in the patch notes who's getting a buff and who's getting a nerf, but those are direct buffs and nerfs. I'll be more so going in depth on the indirect buffs and nerfs. You might be thinking, Dekar, I haven't got all this time. I can't watch all this. And that's where the too long didn't watch comes in. So, for those of you who don't have that time, this is the breakdown for the most important changes of this patch. Full clearing got nerfed, which means gankers are slightly better, as well as Ivern, since he doesn't clear the Krug camp anyway. Samira and Kai'Sa got nerfed, which means the other ADCs got buffed. Camille getting nerfed, as well as the jungler nerfs, mean top laners that are not Camille, that are not Renekton, are both getting buffed. Caitlyn's big buff means she is better. This is a slight nerf to brush abusers, as well as to people without anti-siege. Urgot's buff means the 4 people who still play Urgot got a buff. Katarina buff is an indirect buff to Riot. They're going to sell more skins on this bitch. Lee's buff plus the jungle changes means we're going to see more skill-based jungling. Jinx buff, again, similar to Caitlyn, anti-siege is slightly nerfed, as well as that is a buff to Bud Light. We're going to see more aces. Fiora buff is going to be a nerf to tanks in the top lane, as well as tanks in the jungle. Skarner nerf is a Seraphine buff, because she killed his people. Everfrost and Cosmic Drive is an enormous control mage buff. This hurts melee carries. Grievous Wounds buff is a sustained nerf, but also a nerf to dogs who have to abuse the Moonstone. And on top of that, Moonstone nerf is again a nerf to dogs. And that's it for the patch. Not a perfect patch. Get rid of that Katarina bullshit, and I think it would have been great, but still a good patch. I really enjoy the changes. I enjoyed the direction they're taking the game, and I love when the game changes. You know, I like when the meta shifts. I enjoy it. It's fun. I don't like playing the same thing over and over. I like when the game is different. Good job, Rito. Anyway, as usual, I fucking love you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for clicking. Thank you for subbing, liking, commenting, loving, upvoting, retweeting, Patreon, OnlyFans, Fansly, posting on my subreddit, etc., etc., etc. And I hope you enjoy this video. So for this patch, there were some clear intended winners, and those were just the direct buffs that were given out. So Amumu got a base HP and an E buff. It's not too big. He got 25 damage on his E. It's great wave clear, decent for later on, especially because he gets multiple rotations of the E, but it's not gonna make him an S tier pick, you know. Braum got an R buff, which is pretty decent. There have been quite a few moments I can recall having a Braum on my team or enemy team where they don't have their ult up, but there's a crucial fight because they ended up using it in the fight before. So this will probably narrow that margin, make it so that he has his ult up in crucial team fights much more often. Caitlyn got a scaling AD, scaling attack speed buff, and that's going to be 9 AD at level 18 and 9% attack speed at level 18. Both of which are basically a free longsword and 3/4 of a dagger, which is about, what, 500 gold in efficiency, item efficiency, which is pretty decent, especially considering all of her items are going to scale multiplicatively with those buffs. So it's pretty nice, not oppressive or anything. Doesn't make her already strong lane phase even stronger. It's just a late game buff. Fiora's buff here is pretty damn significant. She's getting 0.5% base on her vital proc, so that's just 0.5% of your max HP will be additional true damage on a vital proc, and then she is getting an additional scaling buff to every 100 AD she has. She'll get another 1% on that vital proc. So an example of a 2-item spike for Fiora currently, pretty decent build, pretty common build she's getting is Shield Bow Essence Reaver. It's about 90 AD, as well as the adaptive damage, so she's going to have roughly 100 AD, and a 5 vital proc on that combo is going to give about 7% bonus straight up true damage, right? That's going to be a vital into ult, into proc the whole ult, into you're probably just dead, right? So yeah, that's that direct buff, pretty damn huge. Jinx got a revert to her HP nerf. Last patch, she lost 60 HP. This patch, she's just gaining it right back, which is about 1.2 auto attacks level 1. Late game, it's pretty negligible, but still, 60 HP is nothing to scoff at, you know? It's a decent buff. It's probably, in combination with the Samira and Kai'Sa nerfs, going to give her a spot in the meta. Katarina, this buff makes no fucking sense. I don't get it. The champ is... She's already good. I'm not a big fan. I don't know what they intend to do. They probably have like 3 new skins or something coming up for her. This is probably the only change this patch that I really disagree with. Urgot, his W on hit is about 50% better for any on hit effect. So the Kraken Slayer, the Bork, the Wit's End, things like this are now actually going to be roughly viable items for him rather than kind of just dead weight, because his W would be a pre-patch / buff 1.5 attack speed on any other champ would equal his damage output for these items. Now he's going to get 2.25 attack speed would be a rough equivalent for any other range champ, right? So that's pretty decent buff. Lee Sin is probably in the jungle. He's probably going to be one of the big winners this patch because he just got a Q buff, which reduces the cooldown by 1 second every single level. And at late game, that's very fast. But on top of that, the meta change is going to be pretty beneficial to him. Next pure buff is going to be Soraka. She's getting more move speed on her Q after it lands, as well as her W heal is just plus 10 flat healing overall. This is a slight buff to ADCs or bot laners who don't build sustain early on, don't get sustain, as well as a slight number buff for her since the Grievous Wounds nerf for a bunch of items is coming. Next straight up buff I will say is probably the strongest mid lane buff. That's going to be Talon. He's getting a cooldown reduction on his rake as well as 0.15 bonus AD just straight up added onto it. So that's going to be a significant change to his wave clear. It also opens up better itemization. He doesn't get shoehorned into going the gore drinker or anything like that, rushing the whip so he can one shot the wave and walk away. He can now do that a bit easier without ruining his itemization selection. I fucking hate Talon metas, but this is pretty necessary. You never see him anymore. Next buff is going to be the Tryndamere. He's just getting 3 base AD, which is not the end of the world. It's not the worst thing, not the best thing. It's just kind of a band-aid buff to a champ who kind of has been left behind, you know? So with the recent crit item changes combined with this, we might see Trynd more often, but I don't think he's going to be too problematic like he was a couple years ago, you know? We're seeing another buff is going to be Varus. His W is getting buffed, so if you have a marked, you have a better execute, as well as you have a better fully charged Q onto the opponent, which kind of is a skill-based buff. This will probably, in combination with the Kai'Sa and the Samira nerfs, open up Varus even more in competitive. We're probably going to see him quite a bit on this patch. For low elo, the Varus buff means nothing. Next buff here is going to be the Veigar. He's getting minus 10 mana cost on his Q, which is really big since he spams that in lane. On top of that, he's getting the R buff, which is a cooldown buff, which is nice, just opens up more fight opportunities for him. But on top of all this is an indirect buff that's going to be the Everfrost buff, which is a strong control mage item, and Veigar is one of the best control mages, so we'll see exactly how this combines with it. I think he might be one of the sleeper picks after these few changes. Now, we've seen all of the buffs that were given out this patch. Now we're going to see all the nerfs, aka the losers. So for top lane, we've got Camille, and she is getting an additional 2 seconds on her W cooldown, which is going to eliminate a few trading opportunities, open up a little more counterplay against her, get rid of a tiny bit of her sustain, tiny bit of her wave clear, which is a decent nerf. It's a step in the right direction. I think she's still got a spot in the top 5. She's just not going to be, you know, bar none best top laner. Ban this bitch all the time, you know? Next, we've got Kai'Sa, an ADC nerf. She's getting a Q damage nerf, and it's per missile. She's losing damage. The Evolve is losing damage. Isolation damage is losing damage, so she's going to have less assassination potential. She's going to be slightly more tuned. I don't think this removes her from the meta. I think she's still going to be a top 3 ADC, especially in competitive. And so it's, again, just like Camille, step in the right direction, probably needs a little bit more. Renekton, that's another top laner, and again, another top laner seen in competitive, getting spammed everywhere, right? His Q is now going to heal a little bit less in waves off of the minions, and so that's going to really hit on his sustain in lane, as well as his duel potential when you fight in the wave. This is going to open up a little more counterpick potential, such as the Quinn matchup. Everybody knows that. Quinn beats his ass, right? Well, it makes her slightly better against him because he has just a little less HP every time he Qs the wave. He doesn't lose his identity. He's still the same champ, but there's slightly less sustain for him and makes him a little more countered. As for the next one, a lot of dog ADCs are pretty upset over this. Samira is seemingly gutted, right? Her passive and her Q are both going to have lower base damage, but they scale a little bit better. The W is just an entire fourth of a second cutoff, so that's more skillful. Her E cannot be used as an escape onto allies or anything like that, right? So again, more skillful. She has to choose her fights more wisely. And then on top of that, this is really gonna hurt low-level players. Her E can click turrets. So when turret diving, you're probably gonna see a lot of these terrible Samira players. They're gonna E the turret, right? And it's gonna give up a lot of kills. I look forward to seeing this. I think it's hilarious. I love when bad players get punished, you know. On top of that, her R has from 3 seconds to 8 seconds. So she doesn't just get to spam it in the fights. This is perfect. I think Samira was probably the most face roll ADC we've seen in a long time. So I'm happy with this. Good. On top of that, this is an indirect buff to every other ADC. When the best champions get nerfed, such as Kai'Sa, such as Samira, that is an indirect buff to the other ones, the champions that are worse than them by comparison. So I love it. Fuck you, Samira. Next nerf is a little sus. It's the Skarner nerf. We are seeing Skarner get nerfed, but I don't see Udyr anywhere on this list, right? So I don't really understand it. I don't get it. Skarner takes a bit more skill than Udyr does, I'd say. His CC isn't just run up and EU. His CC can run up an R, but that's an R. That takes 60 plus seconds to come back up, right? Whereas the Udyr, he can stun you, and then 5 seconds later, stun you again, stun you again, stun you again, right? Like, they're both stat balls. Why is the harder one getting nerfed? Anyway, he loses a little bit of his base HP, and he's losing 90 HP at 18. It's not the end of the world, but it's still like, I don't get it. They're targeting the wrong thing. That's it for the champion changes. Now on to the item changes. So we've got, again, Quinsu is just getting more attention. Someone at Riot just has a boner for this item, but whatever. Quinsu is getting just a 5% attack speed buff, so we're going to see even more Senna jackasses building this shit. But aside from that, it's not too big a deal. It's an item that I think should open up itemization opportunities and should be an option, but at the same time, stop trying to force it. I don't know. Morello's getting plus 10 AP. Mortal Reminder is getting 5 AD, and Chempunk is getting 100 HP. All three of these are the Grievous Wound items, and they are all getting just straight up efficiency buffs. This is to slightly counter the sustain meta that we're seeing, right? And so when you buff an item that counters sustain, you are nerfing sustain without outright nerfing it, right? The enemy still has to make the correct choice of buying those items. The enemy still needs to make a slight decision in either getting their next big item spike or countering you, right? So this opens up options, but it doesn't force you to buy any of these things, which is nice. Now for these two other buffs, these are probably my favorite buffs in this patch. That's going to be the Cosmic Drive, where it is now a very solid second item pickup. It gives you Basically an option such as IE when you get your third crit item, right? It gives you a huge buff. Well, the Cosmic Drive, once you get your second AP item, so you grab an AP Mythic or just a high AP item, good for your champ, and then you have your adaptive AP, maybe a Dark Seal, and then you pick up the Cosmic Drive. That's going to give you 160 AP, and that's going to give you haste and base move speed at all times. Once you have that AP, you just truck it, right? Really, really nice. I like this change. I think it's cool, but also it might be a little oppressive in that base move speed is one of the most underrated things in the game. So we'll see. Plus, it's a grand total of 40 ability haste for one item. That is a lot. That is a shitload. For immobile control mages such as Orianna, I think this item is probably a bit overtuned now. Next up is going to be the Everfrost. I like Everfrost. I love a new CC item. I love an item that isn't just pure damage. I like an item that adds control. Even though it's, for all the champs that I play, it's very frustrating to run into. I do like the idea behind it. It's not like Zhonya's, where you're just invulnerable, right? It's something that takes skill. It's a skill shot. If you land the snare portion, it's pretty big, game-changing, but also it's not a huge stat ball or anything. Of course, now with the buffed timing on the cast, I think it might be one of the most OP mythics for the AP mages, especially control mages. Again, just like that other Cosmic Drive buff, I think this one's going to be pretty huge too. Last but not least is going to be the item nerf, and this is the Moonstone nerf. Moonstone is fucking stupid. It is non-interactive. It's a dumbass item that just allows shitty players to profit off of being shitty players. I'm glad this is getting nerfed. I think it needs a bit more. They probably should have nerfed the overall healing, not just the base. Probably should have made it 80 HP, but whatever. At least it's getting nerfed, right? Needs a little more. We'll see soon. So that's it for the champs and the items. Now on to the biggest change for this patch. That's going to be the jungle nerfs. So they are hitting the XP total, just straight up, the XP you get from the jungle camps, as well as the gold earned from jungle camp. So for this vid, I'm going to read off those changes, and then I did a little short clear of the first full rotation and then the second rotation that spawns after in the first roughly 6 minutes to show just exactly how much XP you're losing if you were to do just 2 full clears. The number values here are going to be Gromp loses 10 XP and then 13.5 XP at max level, and it's just straight up 20 gold, so it always gives 20 less gold. Krug, the big Krug, is going to be minus 10 XP, 13.5 at max, and minus 10 gold. The small Krugs, which is the biggest part of this, are going to be minus 2 XP per small Krug, and then scaling up to 2.7, which, if you do the full camp, is going to be 12 XP at level 1, and then 16.2 scaling up. They reverted the gold change, which is pretty nice. They're still worth a lot of gold, but much less XP. The Raptor is going to be, the big Raptor, not the small ones, is going to be minus 10 XP, and scaling up to, again, 13.5. So, for the first clear, and this is just, it doesn't have to be done in-game, you just know straight up, you are losing 42 XP on your full clear, and you're going to be losing 30 gold. On the second clear, since I'm the only champion in the game, the camps are going to be level 4 when they do the second spawn, which can vary. It can be level 3 or level 4, as well as if I did it very slowly and I'm just super behind or something. Let's say you got invaded, you're getting blasted. They might be level 5 on their next spawn up against you. So it varies, but the amount of XP loss on that second clear turned out to be 10.75 on the big Krug, 12.9 on the small Krugs, all 6 combined, 12.25 on the big Raptor, and 11.5 on the Gromp, so 47.4 total. So for the first 2 full clears, we're going to be getting roughly 90 less XP, and then we're going to be getting about 60 less gold. Anyway, it's going to be time to start up the stream. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I fucking love you guys, and I hope you enjoyed the patch notes breakdown. We'll be doing this for every patch coming up, and we have some more guides coming out soon. Now that Bernstein's got into the flow of editing, and I've gotten into the flow of actually recording shit for him, the YouTube's going to pop off. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.